Hi everyone, welcome to week 7 of Qualitative Methods for the Health Professions. This week we're going to focus on data management and data analysis. Your only assigned reading for this week is Chapter 8 in your Cresswell and Poth text, which focuses on data analysis for qualitative studies. So the goal of analysis of qualitative data is, the practical goal is really to find answers to your research questions. This is a fluid and emergent process. It is iterative and it begins with careful data generation. So the data collection process is very important. You'll hear me use the term analysis synthesis because we do both of these things in qualitative analysis. We analyze the data, the words that we have in front of us, and we also have to synthesize and kind of pull it together. Doing that well is supported by using fit description. And one of the key points I'll make here is distinguishing description from interpretation. And that will come back to in the next couple of weeks as we talk about this process. But being organized and having your data in an organized fashion is also very important. A lot of times you'll hear about qualitative data coding. And as Mgmt and Tisdale summarized, it's really just assigning some sort of shorthand to various aspects of your data so that you can retrieve specific pieces of data. So you're going to think about taking text and breaking it up into separate buckets that will inform your research, answering your research question. And again, coming back to this term analysis synthesis, here's another definition from another source that I like to refer back to. You glean from the assembled textual examples an essential understanding of the experience that you were studying, so the experience that you're interested in from your participants, and and you're going to put that together back in a way to help readers appreciate the depth and complexity of that experience. And the understanding isn't just straight from the text. It's this, again, it's this breaking down and then into the parts and then gathering it back together to pull those relevant pieces back together in a synthesis. Okay, so these all sound like great ideas, but how do we actually do it? The first step is really just organizing your data. Now, for the purposes of this class, we'll have just one single interview to analyze. But generally speaking, in a qualitative study, there will be multiple documents, including interviews. You'll have field notes. You might have observations. You might include document reviews. So all of your data need to be organized in a way that makes sense for your study. And the first step generally, and especially when we're talking about interviews, is reading through the transcripts. Before you are really doing any coding or classification, reading through the transcripts and then making notes or memoing as you go along of kind of the key concepts that are coming up. And of course, you're doing all this with your research questions in mind. Then once you've done the initial read-through, you're going to describe, classify, and interpret the data into codes and themes. So we'll keep talking about this for a few more weeks to try to clarify these concepts. But initially, you're basically putting your data, labeling it into different categories, and organizing it in a way that's going to help you answer your research question. Then we have an interpretation step often. And this is where a theoretical framework or lens really comes into play, where your theoretical positioning for the study is going to inform how you interpret the data. And then, of course, we have to report our findings, and there are different ways of representing or creating data visualizations. Sometimes we just report it in quotations in a written report. But we can also use graphics and models and things like that to represent our data. And really the final analytical steps include revisiting the literature during the synthesis process to understand how your findings fit into the larger picture. And also, I want to highlight that we want to focus on reporting the analytical process as well. It's not just the results of the process, but how the data were analyzed is actually a very important component, because we want to report that closely enough so that another researcher could potentially repeat the process. Just a quick comment on computer-assisted qualitative analysis and software. There are some software products that can be used for qualitative analysis. In Vivo and Atlas TI are the most well-known ones, and they're ones I have used in the past. Using a software program, it's not really necessary if you're just coding 1 or 2 interviews, but if you have a larger corpus of data, then it can be very useful for data organization. However, it doesn't change the process. The software does not do the coding for you, which is quite unfortunate. But the researcher still is doing the work. There's just tools within the software package that can be used to tag different text segments with different codes. And then you can sort of click a button and pull up all the text that has the same code. So these can be really useful, again, especially for a larger initial data body of data to start with. But again, the researcher is always making the decisions about what goes into which category. So the software does not do that work for you. Here are my references for this week. If you have any questions about this, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion about it in the coming weeks, but please do feel free to share your questions on the discussion forum.